How's it going, everyone? It's Javi from Where's SpongeBob 1000, and today is July 8th, 2020, as obviously the main focus of this video will be Invest 98L, which looks to be our next tropical depression at this point, and it's becoming more and more likely we're going to see a Tropical Storm Fay out of this disturbance just off the coast of North Carolina, as it has an 80% chance of formation within the next 48 hours and an 80% chance over the next 5 days, as well as currently the low pressure just moved out onto the open waters of the Atlantic over the Gulf Stream. So I would expect over the next 24 hours we will see a tropical depression form as this storm continues to move through the warmer Gulf Stream waters with a ton of latent heat at this point, and that will definitely strengthen this as it continues to move on northward. So your questions might be, what are the impacts of this? How strong this will be? And we'll answer that right now. And to determine those answers, we first gotta look at the water vapor imagery. So this is Invest 98L right here in sort of this envelope of water vapor right here, and I would say low pressure is a little bit here. And the first thing you'll notice is that most of the moisture is towards the eastern portion of the storm, and it's as a result of a lot of wind shear pretty much drifting a lot of these thunderstorms more towards the eastern side, as we see a dip in the jet stream here, and we see a trough dipping through the middle of the Atlantic currently, which is bringing a sprawling area of thunderstorms and drifting a lot of that moisture to the east of this storm. However, that wind shear is expected to die down as a ridge that's currently over the Gulf of Mexico will continue to expand, and the new ridges begin to form in this area, and that ridge will continue to form and continue to dominate more of the western Atlantic, which will force this storm a little bit more up north, and we will see that wind shear die down as a result, and we will see that storm begin to look more symmetrical as time goes on, as that wind shear that's currently to the eastern side will die down. So that's going to be the steering force that's going to turn this up northward. And in terms of the dry air, there isn't a lot of dry air at this point. We do have a little bit of dry air to the northern portion of this storm. However, it's far from anything that's going to hinder it at all, pretty much, since it's very small and pretty far outside the center of circulation. However, there is a lot of dry air towards the center of circulation. However, like I said, the storm will begin to look more symmetrical as it continues on more northward, and we will see those thunderstorms begin to spiral around the northern part of the eye and spiral more toward the eastern part, which should bring the heavy rain throughout the east coast. Let's continue to move on. What other factors will determine whether this develops or not? We saw that the dry air isn't going to be much of a factor at this point, and while the wind shear is currently limiting this from developing right now, it's expected to die down a little bit as a ridge continues to form in the eastern Atlantic. So we will see pretty humid enough conditions, and also fairly lighter conditions when it comes to wind shear for the most part. So when you hear that, you might be thinking that, oh, this is definitely going to strengthen. However, another limiting factor we need to keep in mind is that as the system continues to move up north, while it's going to be over 80-degree waters over the Gulf Stream, as it moves up north, you see the yellows begin to pop up as we move more up north to the mid-Atlantic, and that represents mainly 70-degree water temperatures, which is a little bit cooler than what you typically see a tropical storm develop in. So I think that should definitely limit its potential when it comes to strengthening, because obviously hurricanes require a lot of latent heat from the ocean to strengthen rapidly, and hurricanes need rapid evaporation to get as strong as they could. However, it seems like it's going to go over mainly mid to high 70-degree water temperatures as it moves up north, which will definitely limit this from rapidly strengthening, which is definitely the good news. And you might think that this storm will it's unlikely that this storm will develop into a tropical storm as a result of that. However, I wouldn't be so confident in saying that, because while it is lower than the 80-degree threshold, the sea surface temperatures, it isn't so much cooler to where it can't really absorb some of that latent heat that's in that upper to mid 70-degree water. So there's still a little bit of latent heat for this tropical cyclone to work with. And also, it's likely that this storm is also going to be enhanced by a lot of the cooler air from a trough that's going to move through the U.S. Later into this weekend, and it should sort of be a hybrid type of storm where it'll have some tropical characteristics. However, will be influenced as well by some baroclinic influences as well, which will help strengthen it over slightly cooler than typical sea surface temperatures that hurricanes would develop in. And so I wouldn't let your guard down just yet that this won't develop into a tropical storm just because it's going to go over less than 80-degree water temperatures, because like I said, there's going to be just enough latent heat to where in the upper 70-degree water temperatures for this storm to work with, and will be enhanced by some of the instability that's going to be towards the west of this as it continues to move up north. So I still do expect this to strengthen into a tropical storm at this point, because there's going to be limited wind shear, limited dry air, and just enough warm air and maybe instability to where this will develop into a tropical storm. Let's take a look at the GFS model to prove that there's going to be a little bit less wind shear that'll hinder this from developing. So this is as of right now. So you see that there's a bit of wind shear going through this storm currently, as there's currently a trough through that dip through the western Atlantic Ocean, and that's drifting a lot of those thunderstorms to the east like you just saw earlier. However, we're beginning to see a little bit of a ridge form in this region, and that's going to steer this up north closer to New England and the northeast region. So as we move forward, that ridge begins to definitely strengthen and form and pretty much steer this directly up north. However, as it moves up north, we will see a little bit of wind shear that's going to be enhanced by the jet stream that's just to the north of it, and a trough that's going to move through the U.S. as time goes on. So that might cap its potential strength by a little bit, since we're going to see a slight amount of wind shear. So that's going to be the key in this, I think, the X factor, because it's still uncertain how much wind shear will be there. However, if it's less than we think, then it's more likely to strengthen, obviously, and maybe could get to a 40, 45, 50 mile per hour tropical storm, or stronger than expected. However, if there's more wind shear, then it's very possible that this doesn't develop into tropical storm. So any minuscule changes in the wind shear forecast will be huge in terms of determining this strength forecast. However, if I'm going to be real, it's unlikely that this will be a major event. It's definitely almost impossible this will develop into a hurricane. I don't expect this to be major. I expect this mainly to be a rainfall event inland, so definitely watch out for that. And along the ocean, maybe some higher waves, and maybe in some isolated areas, minor coastal flooding. However, it isn't going to be anything major along the coast, as it's going to be mainly weak. However, that rain will be there, so if you live near a flood zone, definitely watch out for that, because I definitely do see a flash flood threat as a result of this tropical disturbance. And if we move up north, that wind shear definitely strengthens as this trough moves through the Great Lakes and into the northeast. And one thing that's definitely good news is that this storm is going to move pretty fast, and that's as a result of this trough, obviously, and this dip in the jet stream that's going to pretty much steer rapidly up north to where it won't bring that much impacts for that long along the northeast and New England coast, which is definitely good news. However, we definitely do need to see the wind shear, because if the wind shear is lighter, it's more likely that it's going to be a slower moving storm, and it's more likely to be a stronger storm. So definitely gonna keep in mind of that over the next 2 days, as strength forecast is very difficult to forecast. However, I can safely say that that we're going to see mainly a weak storm from this, whether it's a weak tropical storm, just a tropical depression, which seems most likely at this point. So it's going to be mainly weak in terms of wind and wave threat. However, that rain will be there, and I want to emphasize that real clearly. So if we take a look at the assembly member check, and a lot of them are in agreement at this point, and I don't expect it to shift that much, because when it comes to storms that move fast and storms that have like strong steering currents, the margin of error is a lot smaller, because it's when there's a strong steering current, it's pretty obvious that that a tropical disturbance would follow that steering current, since the steering current is so strong and so defined that it's unlikely that any other weaker steering current would divert it. However, if steering currents are weaker, that's when forecast tracks become a little bit more iffy when it comes to forecast tracks, because there's not really defined or confident stronger steering flow that would steer it towards one direction, as usually tropical systems deal with multiple steering flows that we don't even know about. However, it seems like the steering flow is going to be quite strong, because obviously there's going to be a dip in the jet stream, and it's going to move generally through this direction, and it's going to hug the coast pretty much, and it's likely that this will make landfall somewhere, whether it's in Long Island, New Jersey, where I am located, or the Delmarva Peninsula. And so that's definitely a little bit worrying, because I said that if this moves a little closer to land, we're going to see more of the rain, and it seems like it's going to happen, as the storm is likely to pretty much make landfall along the northeast to mid-Atlantic coast. Where exactly, that remains to be the question. However, I would still be confident that we're still going to see rain, a heavy rain threat wherever this makes landfall between Long Island or the Delmarva Peninsula. So if we take a look at the strength forecast right now, I would say it's about split when it comes to whether this will develop into a tropical storm or not. We have a good portion developing this into a tropical storm. However, we also have a good portion not developing this above tropical depression strength. I would say this I would say that this may be a little outdated. I'd expect that there's a little bit more of a likely chance how this will develop into a tropical storm, because it's going to be over warmer water and lighter wind shear, just enough to where I expect it to maybe develop into a tropical storm. And also, it's likely at this point, almost guaranteed, it's going to develop into a tropical depression. So it really only needs to develop about 5 miles per hour, strengthen 5 miles per hour more to develop into a tropical storm. And that seems like it's becoming more and more likely, as I would expect a tropical storm to impact the mid-Atlantic and the Northeast. However, whether this develops into a tropical storm, tropical depression or not, one thing I could say for certain is that we're going to see quite a heavy rainfall event throughout the mid-Atlantic, especially the coastal regions. I'm talking about the Outer Banks, where we could see localized areas of 5 inches of rain potentially over the next 5 days. Delmarva Peninsula could see 2 to 3, extending all the way to New Jersey, New England. It seems like a heavy rain threat is likely in this region, and I think my main concern with this is the flash flooding, because it seems like this rain is gonna fall down very rapidly in only a couple of hours or minutes. Since the storm is moving so fast and they're still expecting 2 to 3 inches of rain, I expect that rain to downpour very fast, and that rain and all the 2 to 3 inches of rain downpour very fast. And there's going to be a lot of thunderstorms associated with this. That's going to enhance the rainfall over this region, and it's gonna and that rain's gonna pile up very quick. So that makes me worried when it comes to flash flooding. In terms of river flooding, it really depends on your location when it comes to river flooding. If your location been experiencing a lot of rain over the past several days, then you're more likely to experience it. However, if your area's been mainly dry, then you're less likely to see days of river flooding or river flooding at all. So definitely keep in mind of those rivers nearby your area, because you definitely could see an extended period of river flooding if you've experienced rain over the past several days or weeks during this year. So let's look at the radar forecast for to show you guys what to expect when it comes to rainfall, and to show you how fast the rainfall will fall within a short period of time. So let me pull up the GFS radar rainfall forecast, and you could see that. Let me put you back. There's a storm as of right now. Most of the thunderstorm bands are to the eastern side, but like I said, it's going to become more symmetrical, and we're going to see more rain towards the northern and the eastern side of this storm. So if we continue to move forward, as that ridge builds, we're going to see that rain get forced into the east and the northern portion of this storm, and we will see that rain move towards the northern portion and then impact the Delmarva Peninsula with heavy rain and a lot of thunderstorms over this area. And then a lot of that rain moves over New Jersey, and we see heavy bands of rain over this area. So I would expect a flash flooding threat to potentially be likely with this, because it's going to rain in a very quick fashion. And it doesn't only stop in New Jersey. That rain continues on to upstate New York. So definitely look out in that area. Just because you're not along coast does not mean you'll be spared by the impact. So in upstate New York and even extending through New England, definitely watch this when it comes to river flooding. We obviously saw Irene, despite being a tropical storm and a lot of its impact being along coast, we saw Irene dump so much rainfall over upstate New York and Vermont, completely devastating communities. This is going to be nowhere near Hurricane Irene, don't get me wrong, but definitely look out for these, because you don't want to underestimate the rainfall these tropical systems could bring, even if you're well inland. And I think Irene proved that definitely back in 2011. So to conclude, this storm isn't going to be impacts along coast are going to be limited. You might see much higher rip current risk, higher waves, and bigger swells along this. However, coastal flooding seems unlikely, as this storm won't really have enough energy or wind to create those waves and to create a major wave threat that would bring coastal flooding. So along coast it should be limited. Wind should be limited as well, because like I said, it is a very weak storm. And the biggest threat with this is going to be rain and flash flooding. So definitely keep in mind if you're along the rivers or creeks on the East Coast. But anyways, guys, I thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe for more content, and I hope you guys have a good day, a good night, or a good morning whenever you're watching this. So have a good day.